Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Rock Sports Showdown. I'm your host, Kristen Karem, and alongside me are amazing analysts Cameron Collins, Kenny Moore, and Big Dave Miller. It's been a big week in sports, so let's get started. This past weekend, Rock football defeated Seton Hill 55-21 to claim the PSAC West Championship and will take on Bloomsburg next weekend for the PSAC Championship game. Dave, what are your expectations for the Rock?
It's probably going to be the toughest game of the year, even more tough than whenever they had to go to Gannon and play in the swamp up in Erie and lose that game. But it's going to show this team whether they were destined to win this championship or not because of this high-caliber offense, which is great for them, top 5 in virtually almost every statistic nationally. It's going to show them how good they are going against like the other side of the East and going into a hostile territory in the championship again like they were 2 years ago against Kutztown and see what their offense is made out of. Bloomsburg is not an easy competition. They only give up 19.8 points per game, and they hold their opponents to under 100 yards rushing, which Slippery Rock thrives on the pass, but they can also beat you on the legs as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if Slippery Rock can pass the ball, if that's going to open up their running game as well. So to me, it's whoever has a better running game is, well, I wouldn't even say running game because that's what Bloomsburg thrives on. But it's going to be whose defense can beat whose offense because both teams, one, Slippery Rock passing, Bloomsburg running the ball. It's going to be down to whose defense is going to fall first. And I think Slippery Rock can take this. It's going to be, in my mind, a shootout, but at the end, it's going to lean towards more of the winning team. So I think it's going to be Slippery Rock in a hard-fought battle around 38-21.
I agree. I agree with Dave that it's going to be a shootout, but at the same time, I feel as though we have, like he said as well, great defense in Bloomsburg. Like he said, averaging 19.8 points on a defense, allowing on for the other team. So I feel as though Slippery Rock can pull it out and win the game, but it's going to be a very hard-fought game. It's a PSAC championship, so it's going to be a great game. I feel like if Barksdale has a 3-touchdown game and no interceptions, and also does well with his legs, then I feel as though they'll win because, right now in Bloomsburg, they're a little afraid right now because Barksdale's having a great year and he can beat them with the pass and the run, so it adds another dimension to their offense.
Yeah, Dave, you bring up the 19 points per game and whatnot, but I mean, when we went in to play IUP, they gave up 6 points per game coming into that game, and we put up 40-plus points on them. So I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and it's definitely going to be on Slippery Rock's defense. We know the offense can score. I think they'll be able to score just like they always have, but going up against another great offense in Bloomsburg, especially with that great running game, that's when we played Clarion. Their one bigger running back did find some success against Slippery Rock and was able to get the ball down the field. They just weren't able to convert. And so I think the Slippery Rock defense, I think their strong point is pass defense, not so much run defense. They're good up the middle on the run defense. But if I don't know much about Bloomsburg's running back, but if he's quick and can get to the edges, that's where it seems that our defense can be a little weak. So it's definitely going to be on Slippery Rock's defense to bear down and hold Bloomsburg because we know Slippery Rock can score. And I think just like every other game, they're going to be able to put up 30-some, 40-some points. It's just all about being able to stop Bloomsburg. And like Kenny said, limiting those turnovers. That's going to be another big thing. If Barksdale doesn't throw interceptions and we don't cough the ball up and hand the ball over to Bloomsburg, I think we're more than capable of taking this game.
And Franklin Cueta, one of the best running backs in, you look at the numbers like D2 history. He's putting his name up in the rankings, averaging himself almost 200 yards a game rushing on his own. And if you saw this kid last year rushing against Slippery Rock, our defense wasn't like what it was last year or the year before. But my God, did he just pummel that defense. I think he had over 200 yards himself that game as well. So it's going to be down to stopping him, and it's going to be down, like I said, whose defense falls down to who. Because you said when we went up against IUP, it's a different environment. We were at home, It's a great rivalry game. Now it's a championship game. You don't get to see this team as much, and it's going to be at a championship environment in hostile territory. If it was at a neutral site, I'd say it'd be even more in favor of Slippery Rock, but
Yeah.
I still somehow, I don't see this team losing anymore unless it's horrible weather. That's the only thing I can think of that'll stop this team.
Yeah, and I was going to get on that and say that because, with the weather and looking the way it's starting to look, it's starting to get bad. So I could see the weather playing a big factor in our attack, passing the ball, as well as running the ball because, once the weather gets so bad, teams expect you to run, so it's a little easier to defend. But I think that we can pull it out, and I think, like I said, if Barksdale, can control the game and as a quarterback and the Harlan Hill candidate that he is and play well, I think that we pull it out. Maybe I want to say, barring there's no bad weather, we win. I say 42 to maybe 31 or 28.
Yeah, and I think just kind of like with IUP, Slippery Rock's going to have to utilize that high-speed, hurry-up offense, because that was what helped us put up those points against IUP, is IUP was trying to switch out personnel in between every play, and when you're running that no-huddle, hurry-up offense, that's something you can't do, and so they were always out of position, and we capitalized on that, and that might be something that Bloomsburg is used to doing, is maybe switching out a lot of guys on defense, and that's going to be hard for them to do against that hurry-up offense. So I think that might be another factor that, as long as we can utilize that no-huddle, hurry-up offense, it has seemed to get to most teams because, it's right back up on the ball. I mean, seconds after that play's over. So you got to get set, figure out your assignment, and get ready. And that's one big thing Slippery Rock utilizes.
The Indiana Pacers are the only undefeated team in the NBA at 7-0 and are looking like a force in the Eastern Conference. Kenny, do you think the Pacers are a championship caliber team?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're looking at a team, with the likes of Paul George, Paul George, an MVP candidate, right now he's second in MVP voting behind LeBron James. You're looking at a team that was a game away, maybe a few plays away from the NBA Finals last year, so they're definitely a force in the East, not only the East, but the NBA in general, as they have the best record. So, I mean, I look for Paul George to continue to have, his normal numbers of 24, 23 points a game, and his 6 to 8 rebounds, and continue to challenge the Heat, who are obviously the next team, for them to beat. And I think right now, if they play tomorrow, they beat the Heat, unless they play in Miami, because in Miami the Heat are just great. They're they can't be beat, but except for, they lost on the last second shot against the Celtics, but that was their first loss. So.
And what we've seen so far this year is Miami's defense is struggling a little bit, and it's taken them a little bit longer to get it going. Indiana's starting off hotter than anybody else, and like you said with Paul George, but I think one of the big things with the Pacers is they're young. Mm-hmm. But even though they're young, that group of guys have been together for a couple of years now. So it's not that they're inexperienced. They're young and experienced. They've tested the Heat in 2 different playoff appearances. They always give the Heat trouble in the playoffs, and it seems that they're even better this year than they've been in the past. And they pushed the Heat. It was all the way to Game 7 last year, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this team seems even better than it was last year. I mean, the way the Heat are playing right now, like you said, I really think the Pacers could take it to the Heat. I really do. I mean, they're firing on all cylinders, only undefeated team. No, there's only been 7 games played, but, I mean, they're just playing as a very cohesive unit. Roy Hibbert's out there pulling down boards, getting blocks. I know he's averaging about 3.5, 4 blocks a game right now. So, I mean, their defense is one of the big things that's really helping them maintain those victories.
This team has been a threat even 2 to 3 years ago to be a dark horse. And now they've finally risen out of that status and becoming one of the top 2 teams even in the NBA. And if it wasn't for the Miami Heat, this team would easily be the best in the team to beat right now. You look at Paul George, he's really elevated his game from last year to this year. Like you said, an MVP candidate already. People talking about him being an MVP candidate going into the season. And when you have the big men down low, Roy Hibbert pulling down the boards, and when he's at his game, you can't stop a 7'2" center. You saw Shaquille O'Neal his entire career. If he wanted the ball, he was getting the ball. Dwight Howard can be so-so. If he wants to play, he'll do his job. If not, he won't. So And you were saying this team is young and they've played a lot, and that really helps when you're young because they are fast, and so are the Miami Heat. They are young, Miami Heat not so much. So if they don't win this year, I don't see this being a problem with the Pacers. I see this Pacers team being the team of the future, and not even just for this year, but just for years to come for them running this league as well. Because Miami Heat might even be done by the end of this year, with LeBron's contract ending up, and we'll see what goes on there. But I believe this team can win a championship, the Indiana Pacers. I just believe if they have to go up against the Miami Heat, they're the only team that can beat them. So that's why I believe this team can win a championship, because they're, like I just said, they're the only team able to beat the Heat, I think, in the playoffs. The Heat not starting out the way they always wanted to. They always start out slow every year. I could see them getting another 20-game winning streak in the middle of the year. So look out for the Pacers and the Heat, because these are the two best teams in the NBA.
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't say that the Indiana Pacers are, you know, I wouldn't say they're the best team just yet, even though they have the best record, because like you said,
Yeah, I still think it's the Heat, but
yeah, the Heat are starting off kind of slow. But you know, teams start off slow, you know, and they don't end up being the best team in the league. So, I mean, the Indiana Pacers right now, you know, like I said, they're starting off really great, and Paul George is looking like the MVP candidate and looking to win the MVP. But I wouldn't even just say the Miami Heat are the best team, you know, in all actuality. You know, I'd say the Rockets are in the discussion. The Clippers are in the discussion, even though Miami beat the Clippers already. But the Rockets, to me, they just don't have that killer instinct. You know what I mean? That killer instinct that's needed as a team. You know, the Clippers, that feel like they could have it and they could possibly go far, but they also have to get past the Spurs. At the end of the day, that experience, that playoff experience, is what really comes into play during the playoffs and the finals. You know, when LeBron first made the finals, he didn't have that experience. That's why they lost to the Spurs in four straight games. You know, so I feel as though that experience really, really matters. And you know, when it actually gets down to it, the Indiana Pacers, they have experience. You know what I mean? They're getting that experience, but most of them only have 2 years in the playoffs. So, and LeBron and Dwayne Wade, Ray Allen, you know, and then you get the X factors, Greg Oden, you know what I mean, Michael Beasley. We haven't even seen them really. Greg Oden hasn't played in one game yet this year. You know what I mean? So you don't know how he's going to affect the game later on in the season as well. You know, so I think that's important.
Yeah.
The San Antonio Spurs are once again at the top of the Western Conference, with the Thunder clipping at their heels. Cameron, who do you think is going to be the best?
Well, you know, even though the Spurs are sitting at the top right now, and, you know, the Spurs usually sit at the top all year long, we talked about the Pacers being young. The Spurs are kind of the opposite of that. You know, they're one of the oldest teams in the league. They're kind of like the Yankees were this year in baseball. And I think when you have such a long season, like a sport like basketball, you know, 82-game season that, you know, spans, you know, months and months, it's going to catch up with them. And, you know, they're going to wear down. And they do have playoff experience, which is why they do always go far, and they know how to play as a team. And that's what benefits the Spurs. But I just think the Thunder are younger, faster, more talented. The Thunder getting Russell Westbrook back is huge. I mean, you've seen a complete turnaround in what you see from their games right now with having Westbrook back. You know, they don't just have to rely on Kevin Durant to do everything for them. And I definitely just see the Thunder might not end up with the #1 seed, but I see them going further in the playoffs, unless barring some sort of injury like last year with Russell Westbrook, something like that. I still see them going further than the Spurs.
I mean, this is a good competition. I love the battle between the Spurs and the Thunder so far. But like you said, the Thunder are younger. They're much more, I don't want to say much more talented, but just because of their youth, it kind of like shows off like how much more they can do than the Spurs. And but the Spurs, I don't even think the months of the season are going to slow them down. And if they do, it's going to be towards like the playoffs or going into the playoff season. I believe the Thunder are going to have a better record than the Spurs, or even win the conference by the end of the year. Even though you got the Clippers, even though you have the Grizzlies, if you got to pick between these two teams, it's got to be the Thunder. And the Spurs, like you said, all the playoff experience, and going into the end of the year, all the experience in general, having how many consecutive 50-win seasons, like 14 now with Greg Popovich. He knows how to orchestrate a team and win basketball games. So that's why I see them in a close battle again. I think the Thunder, like even with Russell Westbrook like coming back off that injury, and he's going to get a lot better as the year goes by. That's why I think the Thunder are going to have a better record than the Spurs and win the conference this year.
I gotta agree with you. Because Greg Popovich, he's been there for many years now, and he just keeps bringing in these guys, and they draft guys, and you're thinking, who is that? Who is that? But then he always just molds them and makes them run his offense, and his offense it's a great offense. He has guys run up the wing, run up the sidelines, and get to the corner every single time down. If you watch the games, you'll see that every time the guards run to the corners, and they keep the floor space for Tim Duncan running down the middle. And I think their offense, it's a great offense. But the thing about it is Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker, he saves them throughout the year. So I think that the Thunder will have a better record off of the sheer factor that Greg Popovich sits his main players out of the game, so they're going to lose games based on that alone, just like they did last year against Miami. So I really feel as though, if we're picking out of those two teams, that the Thunder will have the better record, and they're actually shooting for that number 1 seed, because the reason they feel like they lost in the finals that year when they played against the Heat is because they didn't have the number 1 seed, and that home court advantage. So I'm looking at the Thunder to have the best record, but at the same time, you can't count out the Houston Rockets or the Los Angeles Clippers, because Chris Paul is the fourth in MVP voting right now. So I look forward to them, but their defense to pick it up a little bit more, But I think that the Thunder will have the better record in the West right now.
Yeah, I think if the Spurs are going to do anything in the playoffs, it will be on Popovich to conserve his guys, so they do have some gas left in the tank. But if they're starting to drop down, and he feels he needs to play them because they need to get wins, they might be running out of gas come playoff time, and so it'll all depend on how much they have left. Guys getting towards the end of their career.
But they are getting younger. They are getting younger now.
They got guys like Thiago Splitter coming in. They do have some. They do have some young guys coming in to help out. So if they can find a healthy mix of that, they could go far. I do think the Thunder are a more talented team.
Yeah, I think Kawhi Leonard's kind of like the Paul George of the San Antonio Spurs. He's kind of taking on that role, because when Manu Ginobili faded away in the playoffs last year, who stepped up? Kawhi Leonard. So I think that he can really come on and be a good player in this league.
Well, it's been a great discussion so far. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with our final 3 topics.
Hi, my name is Erica, and I work here as a team member at Rock and Yogurt, and I'm also a student at Slippery Rock. We were established in May of 2013. We offer different flavors of yogurt. We are located on Main Street of Slippery Rock and are right across the street from North Country Brewery. We have traditional flavors like vanilla and chocolate, and we also offer unique flavors like cinnamon, maple bacon donut, pumpkin, and blueberry.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to start with a little bit of college football. With the upset of Oregon by Stanford Thursday night, the BCS polls were shaken up a little bit, with Alabama, Florida State, and now Ohio State rounding out the top 3 spots. Dave, what are your thoughts on the division?
I thought Ohio State was going to get the short end of the stick on that Stanford win, but with the comeback by Oregon, Ohio State, with the longest winning streak in American football, professional and collegiate football, with what now? 19 games in a row, I believe.
Something like that.
Or 21 games in a row.
Yeah.
Ohio State is ridiculous. But you look at Alabama, of course they're the best team in the nation. The only way they're going to drop is if somebody beats them. And like we were talking about earlier, Texas A&M almost did. But I with these BCS polls, I think we're going to see a Florida State and Ohio State national championship game.
You think Alabama's going to drop one?
Alabama is going to lose to either Auburn or in the SEC championship game.
I certainly hope so.
And because Auburn has been ridiculous this year, you watch Nick Marshall run this team, run this offense. He's not like Cam Newton. No one's going to be like Cam Newton at Auburn, but this man is fast and it's hard to stop him. So, and you see him against Tennessee, he was pulling out fronts that were ridiculous. And even though it's Tennessee, he's still playing guns a-blazing. But Jameis Winston, I think, is the most standout freshman, or the redshirt freshman this year, obviously. And I think he has the best chance to get the Heisman now after the Mariota loss to Stanford. But I love how the BCS is shaking up now. And if there's an Alabama loss this year, all hell is going to break loose.
Yeah, I agree, but to a certain extent. I don't think that Alabama's going to lose to Auburn at all. I think that they're going to be in the national championship against either Florida State or Ohio State,
Yeah.
unless they try to, go against Ohio State and put Stanford ahead of them. But I don't see Florida State losing anyway, and unless the points bump them up. I see Florida State and Alabama staying at 1 and 2, or 2 in their respective numbers, ranking that they're at. I mean, it was a great game that Stanford played. Very shocking, very shocking to see. Mariota played a pretty good game.
Yeah,
a pretty good game.
Making the comeback.
Yeah, and they almost came back and won. But I mean, it just was very shocking to see them play so badly in the first and second quarters. Getting stopped on the goal line twice. And he's not even turning the ball over. They just turn it over on fourth down. So it's very shocking to see, and it's very possible that they could move back up. Depending on how well they play and the way the points go. So we'll just have to wait and see, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the way I look at it. I mean, if you look at that Alabama LSU game, the final score doesn't indicate how close of a game it was until towards the very end. I mean, and that happens often when a team gets that score that kind of puts the game out of reach. And then they get another score because they kind of just are like, well, we've lost anyway. So I mean, it was I think like 35-17. But, I mean, I believe it was about 21-17 till towards the very end of the game. Mm-hmm. And Auburn is a much better team than LSU. And LSU pushed Alabama to their limits. And so that's why I really think Auburn has a shot to take down Alabama. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're going to beat them. But I really think it's going to be a really good game. I think they have a legitimate chance at knocking them off. I really think that's the only game that Alabama stands a chance of losing. I think if they can beat Auburn, they're really not going to be challenged in the SEC championship game.
You still got Missouri. They're a top 10 team.
But that other side of the SEC hasn't been very impressive all year. And so I really only see Auburn being the only team that can really challenge Alabama. And so, I mean, it's going to be I think it's going to end up being 2 out of those 3 teams that are in the top right now in that championship game. I don't really see it being shaken up anymore. I think it's either going to be 2 of Alabama, Florida State, or Ohio State. Some way, shape, or form, it's going to be 2 out of those 3 playing each other. I don't see Stanford jumping back up. I don't see Oregon jumping back up. This late in the season, I don't see it happening.
Oregon, in their past 22 games, are 20-0 against all other opponents and 0-2 against Stanford. And the last road loss that Oregon had was in 2009 against Stanford, and the last home loss Stanford had was 2011 against Oregon. So, I mean, this is probably the greatest rivalry in college football right now with Oregon and Stanford, just how much they battle heads each year. So I think with this game, if it would have been a shutout like it was like in the first half, I could see Stanford being on top of Ohio State even with that loss to Utah. So it really puts Ohio State in a better position to be in a national championship game. But if only it was just next year where we could see these top 4 teams just go at it, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I was going to hit on that point, with the playoffs coming up next year in college football. But you actually hit on a point about the SEC championship game, and I didn't talk about that at all. But Missouri's having a great year. A great year. They lost one game. I don't remember exactly who that was against, but they did lose one game. But they're still going to be in the SEC championship most likely. I think James Franklin was having a great year, and then they came in because he got injured with a new quarterback who's just continuing to carry the load for them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Missouri were to shock the world and beat Alabama. But I mean, I wouldn't put my money up to say they beat them. But I wouldn't count them out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't count them out.
Yeah, I just think Auburn's going to be the biggest test for them. So if they can get by Auburn, I don't see. I mean, I'm not saying it won't be a close game or they won't challenge them at all, but I think Auburn stands a better chance of upsetting Alabama than Missouri would.
Yeah, I think Missouri has a really good defense as well. So I mean, if Texas A&M had defense, more defense, they could have had a better chance against Alabama. You know what I mean? Because of their offensive ability. But Missouri has a great defense and a good offense. So it's kind of like Alabama in a way, except for their defense isn't as good as Alabama. We all know that. No one's as good as Alabama. They're number one. So we'll see.
All I gotta say is War Eagle.
This past week in the NFL, we saw a couple upsets such as Jacksonville, St. Louis, and even Carolina. Kenny, what was the most surprising upset to you?
I'll go with Jacksonville. Seeing Jacksonville get a win against the Titans, whose defense was playing very well the last couple weeks, it was pretty shocking. I think St. Louis, they won because of Tavon Austin. And Tavon Austin, we expect that from him, coming from West Virginia. And as well as he's played in his 4 years there, so Tavon Austin having his phenomenal game that he did have this past game against the Indianapolis Colts. I think that was pretty shocking too, because Indianapolis didn't play that well, which was a shock. But they didn't play that well against the Texans last week. They just found a way to win at the end. So I mean, I'd say the most shocking game was definitely the Titans in Jacksonville.
See, I think it's St. Louis more because with the Tennessee game, Jake Locker got hurt. He's going to be out for the season. And, so that took away a big offensive threat from the Titans. And St. Louis was going up against a Colts team that beat the Broncos. They handed the Broncos their only loss, against Andrew Luck, quarterback of the future. And the Colts were shut out until a minute and a half left in the game. It was 38-0 until the very end of the game. And the Colts got their first score. That just surprises me that a team that went out against the Denver Broncos and put up so many points and defeated the Broncos got shut down by the St. Louis Rams, who haven't played. If they had been playing great defense all year, it wouldn't surprise me as much. But they've been really iffy with their defense all year. And that's why it kind of blew me away.
Well, I can't really say that they've been. Well, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think that the St. Louis Rams have played bad defense all year. They held the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I just think they've been back and forth. Like they have a good defensive
Inconsistent.
game, then they have a bad defensive
Very
game,
inconsistent, I
and
agree.
it's just to come out and shut down the Colts like that.
I agree.
But I mean, even with the Panthers, I mean, holding the Niners to 9 points, they sacked Colin Kaepernick 6 times, and I mean, the Panthers are really turning it on, late in the season here and making a run, maybe pushing the Saints a little bit, but so I mean, even that one, I mean, those two are kind of almost equal with this San Francisco 49ers team that was such an offensive powerhouse last year, and with Colin Kaepernick, who's, was revered as this, high-flying quarterback who they were able to get to 6 times. I mean, that was very surprising as well.
And I thought the most surprising upset was the St. Louis Rams over the Indianapolis Colts. Like the Jacksonville Jaguars, even though they don't have a win yet, they didn't have a win yet, they had signs of hope in each game. Usually, they held the Broncos to their lowest total at that point, and to total points in a game. No one thought the Jaguars were going to win that game, but they held the Broncos down to under 40 points for the first time all year. And they covered the spread. That was the most important part.
They covered the largest spread in NFL history.
But with the St. Louis Rams, and I was looking at this a little info on ESPN today, Tavon Austin, everyone said oh yeah, he's come out of nowhere. People they brought it up on ESPN. People should have seen this coming because the NFL Combine was in Indianapolis, and he was guns a-blazing that day. Just one of the fastest guys there, and had one of the best punt returns I've ever seen. Maybe Patrick Peterson's 99-yarder that won a game for them was the only better punt return I've seen. But when he gets it on the second bounce at the 2-yard line in the corner of the end zone, it was clearly going to go in the end zone and be a touchback for them, and then he just goes down the sideline and just beats everyone. It was ridiculous. He had almost 300 all-purpose yards to himself, one of the first players in NFL history to get 3 touchdowns that were over 50 yards each.
That was the part that I found very fascinating. He only had 2 catches in the game.
138
yards and 2 touchdowns.
So
he's efficient.
The way that the Rams beat the Colts was just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
And the Panthers, I'm not saying I saw this win, but I'm not surprised that they beat the 49ers. They were on a 4-game winning streak going into this. The Niners were on a 5-game winning streak. Colin Kaepernick has not been as consistent as he was last year, and I just thought this Rams win. It's not like it's going to put the Rams in the playoffs, but just this win last weekend just surprised me the most.
Yeah, I mean, Colin Kaepernick threw for less than 100 yards. You know, I mean, as a quarterback, I mean, to me that's it's pretty hard. You know, for a quarterback in the NFL. You know, he's not playing in Pee Wee League. You know, he's playing in the NFL now. So I mean, that's a shock. That's probably the most shocking stat of the entire week, and I'd say that, but. I agree with you guys when you say that the Rams win was definitely shocking, but like I said, Tavon Austin, you know, I mean, the reason why I say that their win was shocking, and I'll agree with you guys that it was really shocking, is because their quarterback, who is it again?
Kellen Clemens.
Exactly my point. You know what I mean? He's not a really good quarterback in the league, so that's why I'll agree with you guys when he's saying that it's the most shocking. And Jake Locker did get hurt, and that is very true. So I mean, I still think that the Jacksonville Jaguars win was the most shocking. But I do understand what you guys mean, and that makes perfect sense.
I bet the Niners wish they had Alex Smith back. Just saying.
The Chiefs will keep him.
Exactly.
With the Saints' 49-17 demolishing win over the Cowboys on Sunday night, they're solidifying themselves as a top team in the NFC. Cameron, do you think the Saints are at the top?
I think they're in the conversation. I think the Seattle Seahawks are still that top team. You know, that defense has still been very, very potent. It's going to be very interesting to see if maybe the Seahawks and the Saints meet. Because you've got this high-power offense going against this high-power defense, and but I think those are the 2 teams that are sitting up at the top of the NFC right now, and I think those are the 2 that one of those teams are going to be in the Super Bowl representing the NFC, definitely.
I looked at the schedule, and I can't remember if it's at Seattle or at New Orleans, but they do play each other this year. So I think this is going to be a preview of what we're going to see in the NFC Championship game, with this high-powered offense and the Legion of Boom in the secondary with the Seattle Seahawks, with Richard Sherman. And I would, if I'm any team that's going up against the Saints now for the rest of the year, I'm scared, because what they did to the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys aren't the best defense. They've given up. They're tied for 31st in yards allowed rushing and passing, but I'm scared to go up against this New Orleans Saints team. When Drew Brees completed 19 passes in a row in the first half and went 34-41 and put up 4 touchdowns, this man is unstoppable just because of his pure arm strength and how he can get the ball to his receivers in so many different ways, and all the weapons that he has around him as well. And their defense is no pushover either. And just the fact that Sean Payton's back, one of the best play callers in the NFL, as you can tell, because without Sean Payton, it was hard for them to win football games, even with the same people on the field. So I believe that either the Seahawks or the Saints are going to represent the NFC. As of right now, I'm going to have to go with the Saints because they're the hottest right now, but still the best team, I think, in the NFC is the Seahawks until they face up against each other.
I think the Saints play phenomenally, but I think it was more personal to that New Orleans Saints defense, because their defensive coordinator Rob Ryan had just come from the Cowboys the year before, and the Saints defense was absolutely horrific last year. So I think that it was more of a message that they wanted to send in that game, and having 40 first downs, NFL record for the Saints. I think that this Cowboys defense was almost just they might have been playing against, a Pee Wee League football team, you know what I mean, as well as they played. Drew Brees, not surprised. You know what I mean, with his stats, not surprised. He's always efficient. He always plays well. Now, will I say they're the best team in the league, in the NFC? I think they're definitely in the debate. But like you said, the Seahawks. You both said the Seahawks. I would agree with that. But I think you have to look at also the San Francisco 49ers. I know that they lost to the Carolina Panthers, but you got to remember now, they don't have Michael Crabtree. Anquan Bolden's playing, but is he really playing? Because I haven't seen him, catch too many passes in the last couple of weeks. And then they're also missing another receiver, and Antonio Gates in that game against the Carolina Panthers. Not Antonio Gates, I'm sorry, he's on the Chargers. Their tight end Vernon Davis went out in that game, I think the second quarter. So I think you have to really take that loss into perspective a little bit, or put it into perspective. And then on top of that, at the Seattle Seahawks, Percy Harvin hasn't even played yet. You know what I mean? So think about that. You know what I mean? So that's a pick. Those three teams are definitely going to be, in a discussion, and then hopefully that fourth team that can come in will be my Eagles. Because they did have a big win this past weekend. But the Cowboys are definitely in the discussion as well. I mean, even though they lost really badly to the to the Saints, I think that's just a bad game. They were looking to that bye week and just played bad. So
and I think also. Another factor that makes the Saints' performance, their offensive performance, even more impressive is the fact that Dallas didn't have any turnovers. Yeah. So, I mean, that was all on the defense. All those yards, it wasn't, in the points, it wasn't that they gave the ball up with terrible field, but you know what I mean? There was an interception and the Saints started on, the other 30-yard line. I mean, they just took it to them. I mean, 242 rushing yards from a Saints team that's not really known for their rushing ability. I mean, they just all out took it to the Cowboys. And I mean, and if they can keep that kind of play up, they're going to be a tough team come towards the end of the season here.
Like Kenny said, 40 first downs. Half of their plays were first downs because they ran 80 plays that game. And Drew Brees is going to be in the running for MVP, I think, this year. Especially with the bounce back here he's going to have from last year. And like you said, with the change in coordinator, you were right. I think it was personal with Rex Ryan and Steve Spagnuolo not being the coordinator like he was with the New York Giants. So, like I said, the Saints aren't the best team. You got arguments for the Niners and the Seahawks, but they're the hottest right now.
Yeah, no question about it. No question about it. The Saints are just hitting on all cylinders. They're definitely hitting on all cylinders right now, and the Seahawks, they had a great game this past weekend too. They had that one loss, but I feel as though when they do meet, that defense will prevail. Mm-hmm. Sherman, come on, hands down the best cornerback in the league because he plays man on man. He's kind of like Darrelle Revis from years past. And he will take it back to the house and every time if you let him, So I think that that defense will definitely prevail against the Saints because a high-powered offense most likely will lose to a high-powered defense. Looking back, check the stats against the Giants and the Patriots. Patriots had a high-powered offense. They lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl. High-powered defense. So, the results.
Defense wins championships.
Defense wins championships, especially come playoff time.
And I can't wait for the Chiefs to beat the Broncos.
And I think that's going to happen as well this week.
Yeah.
I agree with you on there.
All right.
Well, that's all we have for you tonight. We hope you enjoyed the show and will join us again next week. Once again, for Cameron Collins, Kenny Moore, and Big Dave Miller, I'm your host, Kristen Karem, and we'll see you guys next week.